Hello, my name is Daryl. I'll be your instructor for the Alfresco Advanced System Administration course. Our first module will cover installation. Our objectives for this module are for you to be able to understand planning requirements for your installation. We'll do a review of the storage architecture, understand the different installation options that are available to you. We'll understand how to install a pure Tomcat installation, as well as installing a license file. And then lastly, we'll look at some initial tuning options. Our first section we'll cover is planning. Planning is a very critical portion of your Alfresco environment. You will want to make sure that you design your architecture appropriately using supported platforms. In order to do that, you need to check the supported platforms documentation located on the alfresco.com website. Prior to the installation, the one thing that you will need to do is to have your DBAs, or perhaps yourself, create a database as well as a user account within the database that we'll use for our installation of Alfresco. And finally, we do have a tool that will help you validate your environment to make sure that you're in compliance with those supported platforms. Before you start, the supported platforms list is a critical portion of what you need to check to make sure that you are on a supported stack. This supported platforms matrix covers third-party applications such as your operating system, database versions, as well as application servers. You want to make sure that you are within the tested stack that our QA team has approved. We additionally provide a zero-day config guide that is maintained by our support organization. It is currently in a draft status, however, it is updated quite frequently. You will need to be logged into the support.alfresco.com site in order to download this guide. What this guide provides is a number of initial tuning options that are available to you, everything from OS level tuning settings to database to the JVM. You will want to review these in order to set up your production environment for that very first day of production. We also provide this environment validation tool, sometimes we call it the EVT tool. It is located on the code.google.com link, as you see on the screen. You will want to make sure that you download the version that is specific for your version of Alfresco. This tool provides a number of different tests in order to prepare your environment to make sure that it is compliant with the supported platforms matrix. Now, when you download the environment validation tool, it is a command line tool that you will be executing. It requires a number of options, primarily dealing with the database. So you'll see there's database type, the username, the host name, etc. that you'll need to know beforehand. Let's take a look at what this looks like in a couple of screenshots, and then later we'll give you a demonstration of running this tool. So in this particular example, we're running EVT, telling it the type of database is PostgreSQL, running on our local host with the database of Alfresco, as well as the login and password of Alfresco. We're also specifying the V parameter, which gives us more verbose information out of this tool. You'll see the very first test that we do validates the JVM. You see the details there around, we're running the OpenJDK version 1.60.20. It's also on a 32-bit architecture. You'll notice each test will have a pass, fail, or warning status indicated on it. It is your job as the system administrator to interpret these tests. You will want to make sure that you resolve all the failures as appropriate, as well as using discretion on some of the warning messages that you may receive. These warnings sometimes may indicate things that you have yet to configure, so you will want to make sure that you understand them. Some of these warnings also relate to some of the third-party applications which may or may not be installed in your environment, such as the PDF to Swift tool or OpenOffice, just as an example. In this demo, we'll show you an example of using the environment validation tool. I start by downloading the environment validation tool from the Google Code site, making sure that we choose the correct version for the version of Alfresco that we plan to install. Once this is downloaded, I extract it to the file system. Once extracted, I open a terminal window and navigate to that folder. I change the file permissions to make it executable, so I will run the command chmod +x evt.sh. I am ready to run the script by issuing the command evt.sh-t and give it the database type, which will be PostgreSQL, -h, the host name where our database is running, which is localhost, -p for the database port, 5432, -d, the database name, Alfresco, -l, our database login user, Alfresco, -p, our database user password, which is also Alfresco. I'll also add the -v parameter to get verbose messages. Let's review the output. I notice a warn result on our 32-bit operating system. This is fine in our case. Also, I see a few failures on TCP ports 8080, 8005, etc. This is because there's already an existing Alfresco server running that's using those ports. We can safely ignore this as well, since we understand the reason. A good test environment will help you ensure that you have a good production environment. You will always want to have at least 2 build environments. These should be functional replicas in that they should have the same code base as well as the same content models deployed to them. They should be identical. They may be slightly less powered, your test environment, from your production environment. And that's okay, as long as they are functional replicas. Let's also review the storage architecture, as this is one of the key components required for installing Alfresco. The physical storage layer is what we want to focus on here. In the repository, content is represented in 2 physical storage layers, and that is the relational database will house all of the metadata about your content. That's all the properties that your end users are specifying through the life cycle of their content, as well as the content itself, the PDF files, the Excel spreadsheets. The content will be stored in the file system of your application server, typically in a directory either called the dir.root parameter, or we may sometimes refer to that as the alf data directory structure. Now you do have a couple of options for installing Alfresco. The easiest is to use the installer option. This is available on most Linux and Windows operating systems, and there is some limitations that it is only available on 64-bit OSs, but if you are running one of those operating systems, it is the easiest option to get Alfresco installed. It gives you the option to install the JDK, Swift tools, OpenOffice, as well as some of the other third-party tools, including Tomcat and the Postgres database. However, you can use the manual or the WAR file method in order to get more flexibility out of your installation. So if you're using an existing application server, or if you have an existing database server that you want to connect to, this may be the option that you would choose. It is a little more complex in that you do have to scatter the Alfresco installation files across multiple different directories. Prior to installation, you do need to prepare your database. You need to create a database user as well as a schema that Alfresco will use. In fact, this would have been done prior to your invocation of the environment validation tool. The database tables themselves will automatically be created upon initial startup, and we also maintain that from version to version. The extension root directory is a key directory for extending Alfresco. If you are using the WAR installation method, you will need to do some configuration within Tomcat. You will need to create the shared classes extension directory as indicated. We typically refer to this directory as the extension root. Depending on the version of Tomcat that you're using, you may also need to add the shared classes directory to the class path within Tomcat's server.xml file. And then finally, copying the alfresco-global.properties file as provided by the installation into your extension root directory structure. Within that alfresco-global.properties file, we need to specify 2 critical portions of the repository configuration, and these are related to the physical storage tiers. First of all, the content storage directory, we need to specify that with the dir.root parameter, and that will point to, by default, what we refer to as the alf data directory. Additionally, the database connection information will be specified, including the database host, the port, the name, the username, as well as the password. Finally, installing an enterprise license is something that you will want to do. By default, when you install Alfresco, you do get a 30-day trial license. However, as an enterprise customer, you will want to download and install your specific license file. Licenses are major version specific, and they will need to be installed underneath your extension root directory under alfresco/extension/license. You will place your .lic file that you download from your support account into this directory structure and either reboot your server, or you can use the Share Administration Console license descriptor tool in order to load your license. Once that license is installed, the file will be renamed to .installed. That's one indicator you know that the system has found your license. You'll also want to check the log file to make sure that if you have any errors or other information as you install your license. If your license is invalidated or expires, your repository will revert to a read-only mode. With that mode, you will not be able to edit or add new content. However, you'll still be able to retrieve existing content loaded in the repository. Let's take a look at that Share Console tool for loading your license. If you go to the More menu at the top, you'll eventually come to the Administration Console. There is a tool on the left-hand side you'll see indicated by License Descriptor. In the upper right-hand corner, if you choose the Edit button, that will allow us to go and choose or load our license that we've previously deployed into that extension license directory structure. Once you load the license, you'll be able to see all the details about your specific license, including the number of remaining days in the license, and if you have any user limits, it'll show those limits as well. Some additional resources for you for installing. The 0-day configuration guide can be located at the following link, as well as the environment validation tool can be loaded from the Google Code link on the bottom. This concludes the installation module of the Advanced System Administration course.